How's it going, everyone? It's Johnny Bede here with a very special episode of the Streamer Stories podcast. Today is episode 50, and I thought, why not bring back the first guest we ever had on the podcast? I've got Matt, aka Finish the Video Game here. Here he is. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
How's it going?
Oh, it's good to have you, man. Yeah, I'm well. How are you doing? How are things?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, I'm so happy you're
first
back.
returning guest.
Yes, official. Yes. We're like, how are we going to do this then? We're going to have to ask different questions. You can't go through the same stuff again. So
yeah.
Oh,
I know.
Well.
Producing a sequel. That's where Streamer Stories has gotten to. We're onto sequels now.
Yes.
You're creating a franchise.
It's like the second autobiography, isn't it? It doesn't quite land the same way.
Know. Well, luckily, there's been quite a lot of change since the last time I was on your podcast, so we should have plenty to talk about.
For sure, definitely. For those who don't know, I finished the video game. Do you want to introduce yourself? Introduce what you do?
Sure. So I run a YouTube channel called I Finished a Video Game, which is the main series that I kind of produce is a lengthy retrospective. Which is essentially long. Well, it's not even feature length. They're premium plus feature length videos about old video game franchises, kind of exploring their history, exploring their importance, looking at what legacy they've left behind, and going through every single game in the franchise. So, some of my videos that have kind of you might have seen. I produced a video that kind of explored Dino Crisis as a series, kind of looked at where it came from, looked at the games, how it transformed over the years, and why it's disappeared for good. And maybe my most notorious video is a 7-hour video that explores the entirety of the Castlevania franchise, all 30 plus games. In detail and with some quite extensive research into their creations and kind of the seedy back office of Konami and why Castlevania is the way it is at the moment. That's what I do full time, and that is my passion and pretty much my life for the most part.
Oh man!
Yeah, that is I Finished a Video Game. It's
and evolves is definitely the word, isn't it? I mean, because that's not what you said 2 years ago. Well, it's been around 2 years ago since. So
the last time I was on your podcast, I was but a mere disgruntled streamer who had a smallish. Well, I suppose it was okay sized. Like, it was small, but it was okay sized. Like, every now and then my stream was quite big, but it was never really big. I think the biggest stream I ever did maybe got like 50 or 60 viewers.
Yeah.
Which is quite good without raids. That's not bad.
No, that's really good without raids.
That's not too bad, but it wasn't ever mega big, and I grew a bit kind of disillusioned with Twitch and with streaming. The last time I was on the podcast was just as I was starting my YouTube channel. So I think maybe when I was on episode 1, I had. I mean, this is going to sound like an awful humble brag. But there's no way to really talk about it without it coming across like that. I don't mean it in that way. I really don't. But it is a podcast about that, so I can't really avoid talking about it. But I think, when I was on episode 1, I think I maybe had, I want to say like maybe 150 subscribers.
Wow.
Like maybe 200. And yeah, as of today, I've got 81,000.
Wow.
And I think the channel has about 7 million views in total across the 13 videos, which doesn't sound like much when you compare it to, the mega channels of the internet, but it's enough to comfortably do full time, and it's a nice little niche to be in, where I can talk
yeah.
about video games and play video games as a job. But I am also not locked onto the horrible influencer grind.
Yeah, which is best of both worlds, then, isn't it? Let's be honest. So
Well, yes. So far, it's been pretty good. Yeah, so it'll be an interesting part 2 to that part 1. Quite the transition, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So I've been doing some questions, and because they have to be different, don't they? So yeah, I mean, so we
can just let it flow.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Totally.
We can let the questions lead us into conversation.
Absolutely. So,
especially as I am the world's worst rambler, as my channel is a testament to. I rarely know when to shut up. So if I keep going, just we need some sort of signal.
Yeah.
Like scratch your whole beard
4 times
to give me a signal to stop talking.
Well, one question
move on.
One question I don't think I ever did ask you back on episode 1 was where did the username come from? Where did I finish a video game come from? It's an interesting.
Honestly,
thing.
it doesn't come from anywhere.
No?
I just thought it was kind of catchy, but it's also like completely not catchy. Like I think most YouTubers don't really have like a title for the channel, do they? They have like a name for themselves. That's usually the way that it works, and I think that's kind of an extension of the fact that most YouTube channels now are really like character driven, as it were. Like you follow for the person, and you follow for the stuff they make, and they make all sorts of stuff, and that's why it's usually people's names. So I kind of wanted it to be like a sort of snarky title to kind of make it a little different. And I don't know why I went with that. I just thought it sounded kind of, a little bit. Look, this wasn't my intention, but sometimes when I look back on it, like I think about the way that like emo and pop punk bands in the 2000s used to name their songs. They would always name them really stupid and snarky stuff, like
really long titles.
This is not meant to be a single or something like that.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like I finished a video game is maybe like accidentally influenced by that kind of like snarky self-referential way, because to say that I finish video games is like a ludicrous understatement. It is I'm finishing franchises at a time. So yeah, I kind of like what it's turned into. The only problem is nobody knows what to call me.
Yes.
If I get like an email from like a sponsor or something, they're just like, "Hello, I finished a video game. What is your name?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's Matt." Maybe if I had a more exciting name, that would be okay. But Matt is like, for like a 30-year-old man from England, Matt is about as common as it gets.
Yeah.
So I need something interesting. And I don't know. I guess that's stuck.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking in my head, calling you the Panic of a Disco of YouTube would actually, I think that sounds like, I don't know if that's an insult.
Hey, I like Panic at the Disco. I'm into Panic at the Disco.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if we have that much in common.
No, you're right, YouTube videos, not tragedies.
No, hey, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, okay, well, just give us a bit of, because your videos are just, I think they're brilliant. I really do, and I've watched as much as I can of every video you've done, because I say
it sound like an endurance test.
Well, it is. we know.
Well, I suppose so. Yeah,
it is. So. I don't know how. I don't even know with you with editing it. You go through more endurance than any of us that watched them. But
probably.
But I say that because obviously there's certain games and certain franchises that I want to play. So I'm like, I can't watch that one. Like Dino Crisis, for instance. I played the first one, but not the second. I'm like, so I've watched half or a third of the Dino Crisis video. So I was like, I'm going to pause there.
Sure, that makes sense.
And then I'll watch the rest of it when I play it.
I'm pretty heavy on spoilers. I kind of it's open season for spoilers on virtually everything that I talk about.
Yeah.
But then I also think, if broadly speaking, if you're clicking on a 4-hour video about a topic, like, you can't be expecting no spoilers.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
they're coming.
I don't think you had any comments. I can't believe you spoiled. You surely haven't had
Yeah,
any.
I know. Yeah. Oh no, I definitely have. I when I first started doing it, I didn't have any like spoiler warnings or something, because I just thought they were kind of like stupid, because yeah, like, if you desperately don't want something to be spoiled for you, don't watch videos about it. I thought that was obvious.
Yeah.
But when I first started, I did get some complaints that I was just spoiling stuff without warning them. And so now I sort of, in my little disclaimer section, I do say, like, obviously there will be spoilers for this, everything to do with this subject.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it went without saying, but apparently not.
No, God, yeah. So talk us through the process of it then. So what is the actual full process of a video, basically? So from start to finish, what goes into it, really?
I mean, it's not actually that complicated, to be honest. Or at least it doesn't seem complicated to me. But essentially, there's basically like 2 phases, really, or maybe like 3, you could maybe say, in that I pick a subject to do a video on, and then from there I just start playing the games. I record everything that I play through. So something I think maybe sets the channel a little apart is that I do legitimately play through and finish every single game that I cover, which maybe is foolish because it slows down how often I can release videos, but I think it adds like some authenticity to my account, because, you know, obviously there's like little things that annoy me that you might not realize happen, or little things that I notice while playing that I really enjoy, that you might not necessarily notice if you just play it for like a couple of hours and then fill in your knowledge with, you know, other sources. But basically, so as I'm playing a game, I'll, you know, take notes and stuff, and think about essentially what the kind of like micro story is of this game. So like a good example would be Rondo of Blood, the Castlevania game for the TurboGrafx. So while I was playing through that, you're thinking about like what is in the game also, but like what is the kind of story of this game's development and its reception, and what it is and where it fits in within its franchise. So you kind of think about that while you're doing it, and then when it's finished, switch over to write a little section. Essentially each game forms its own chapter. They all kind of contribute something different to the overall story. So a lot of that is just kind of sitting in this room with my laptop, listening to music and writing, really. And that can be like really fun, and that can also be super frustrating, because, you know, writing can be extremely fulfilling and extremely satisfying, and it can also be incredibly frustrating if stuff isn't coming out the way you want, or, you know, you're struggling with like a little bit of block or something. Because something I always try to steer away from is just literally saying like, okay, here's what the graphics are like, here's what the gameplay's like, here's what the sound's like that. Always, like, I find that to be a really drab way to approach talking about video games. Like, it just turns the video into like 14 IGN reviews that have been like stitched together, and that's really just fucking dull. So I usually try and think of like at least an interesting way to like phrase talking about the ideas that make up these games, and then you rinse and repeat that for all of the games in the series, and as you're doing that, you kind of you're going back to stuff and revising it as you find new information. You know, you kind of, that might feed into your overall kind of story of the franchise. So like with Castlevania, for example, the kind of broader story of the franchise is that it is a very kind of creative and original franchise that's been mismanaged both by its creators and by Konami, who own the IP. And so everything kind of feeds into that that single narrative. And and then when that's all done, switch over to the mammoth kind of effort that is editing these beasts, but pretty much happens in the same way, just doing it chapter by chapter, sometimes even breaking down chapters into smaller sections so it's easier to do. Because editing a 7-hour video sounds ridiculous, but editing 10-minute videos, that's nowhere near as difficult. So I just break it all down, go through it. By that point, you're like so familiar with the franchise that you're sick of it. So you know which ones are the easy ones to edit, which ones are going to be the difficult ones to edit, and you just plug away at that until it's done, until you've got the final video. So it's not actually that complicated. It's just long. That's the thing. Like, there's nothing crazy about my editing. I think probably the research element is probably where my videos maybe have like a unique edge, because I spend a lot of time diving into old interviews, going through old magazines, trawling up old website articles and forum posts, and kind of really trying to delve into the past and kind of understand how games were received, why games were made in the way that they were. That probably sets it apart a little bit, but other than that, there's nothing too complicated or too crazy about the process. It's just very, very long. But I'm happy to put the effort in to talk about things that I think are interesting.
Yeah, for sure. We I remember us having a chat on one of your live streams about, we were calling you the video game historian. Which I still think that's true. I was going to ask, do you when you talk about, because that is definitely, I think, like a really great value to your channel and what you do for your videos is the history aspect of it. You'd really put the research in. I was going to ask, do you do like stuff like, do you buy old magazines off eBay and stuff like that? Or anything like that?
I mean, to be honest, you don't always need to. Like,
no,
there's amazing people out there really working very hard to preserve old physical media, and there's archives of old issues of Game Informer and EGM and Nintendo Power and stuff. Like a lot of that stuff is preserved on the internet. And, with just a little bit of use of like the Wayback Machine, you can find a lot of stuff that's out there. And it's really just piecing a lot of that stuff together. A lot of the stuff I talk about is, I haven't necessarily, I'm not really finding, unknown scoops, that are fresh information to the table. A lot of this stuff is out there if you bother to look for it. I'm just taking it and kind of piecing it all together into a single kind of cohesive video on the subject. So I think that's where it really that's where kind of what sets it apart, and I love the history element of it anyway. Like I'm a huge history nerd, full stop. And I really, my favorite parts of it are the research parts, like looking into who worked on what, why they did, why someone left a certain company, why they joined a certain company, why someone was hired, why, what their intentions were going into something. They're always the most interesting parts of the video for me to work on. I think maybe I think it would not be unreasonable of me to say that there are far better people out there at analyzing the actual gameplay of games. But I think what I do a good job of is like contextualizing the history element of it. I think I do that well.
Yeah, 100%.
At the end of the day, a lot of my game analysis is quite like basic. I'm going a little bit deeper than this game is fun. But at the end of the day, there are some people out there with some very, very, very impressive YouTube channels and some very impressive minds that can see game design in a way that I often can't. But I don't think that's necessarily what people are coming for all the time.
No.
I mainly just talk about how games how they make you feel and what they're trying to achieve, and whether that works or doesn't work, and why that is. It doesn't have to be much more complicated than that.
No, one of my favorite videos. I don't know I don't even know if I can pick a favorite video, but I mean, definitely up there is I loved your video on Panzer Dragoon. because I didn't know a lot going into Panzer. I tend to find that it's actually some of my favourite videos you've done, because I tend to find, if I don't know much about the games, then I tend to enjoy it because they learn so much more from the experience of watching the videos. But like, I mentioned that one in particular because I remember, again, having chats we've had, but also looking, just watching the video itself, you can clearly see that project evolved, didn't it, really? So that's why we talk about the process of how you make your videos. Like, I think you, tell me if I'm wrong, of course, but I thought your idea was, I'm going to cover the Panzer Dragoon series, but it became much more than that. And like, I'm talking about Sega.
That one in particular like really grew as I made it. The original aim was to just talk about Panzer Dragoon, but like as I was doing the research and as I was doing the writing, I realized that there's like no way to talk about Panzer Dragoon like and do it justice without talking about all of Sega in the 90s and like why their move to 3D didn't work, what happened with their consoles, like why Panzer Dragoon switched from the Sega Saturn, missed the Dreamcast, ended up on the Xbox. Like, that is interesting, that is notable, and like there's no way to talk about that without talking about the consoles and without talking about why the consoles were the way they are. I sometimes think that's something that makes me maybe well suited for this. The things I find interesting about video games are maybe slightly like weird. So like for me, like Panzer Dragoon is super interesting, because it's like 3 Saturn games and then an Xbox game. Like, what the hell is going on with that? Like, what decisions led to that happening in that franchise? Like, why was there no Dreamcast game? Why is there a Game Gear game that came out in like 1998 when the Game Gear was like long discontinued? Like, that is super weird. There's got to be like an interesting story behind that. And sometimes, maybe I'm doing the videos a disservice here, but sometimes I think those stories are more interesting than the games themselves. So certainly with the Panzer Dragoon Game Gear game, that's the truth. But yeah, I really like that side of things. Like, why the hell is this the way it is? You know?
Yeah.
And so and Panzer Dragoon was a good one for that. I was really desperate I've been really desperate to make that, like, since I started the YouTube channel. I really wanted to be the guy who told the story of Panzer Dragoon. I was really worried when I was making it that someone was going to come out with like, oh shit, and bash my mic. I was really worried that someone was going to come out with like that video before me and like beat me to the punch. But it came out, and it's pretty good now. Like, it's one of my lesser viewed videos, but like I think that's to be kind of expected given the subject matter. But it was I'm really happy with that. I'm really proud of that video. I'm really glad that I got to tell that story.
Yeah, it's great. I really enjoyed that. I really did. So you not only cover games obviously as a job and a hobby, obviously for YouTube, but I know you're a huge, obviously we can clearly see in the background, not alone, but I know you're a huge collector of video game items, really, aren't you? So I was just going to ask you, what are your favorite items? What are your favorite collectibles, really?
Well, to be honest, I've been trying to slow down with it recently, just because the market's got a bit nuts, and I sort of, as great as it is to live off of my YouTube money, I probably can't spend all of it on on rare games. So I haven't added to it for a while now, but I do have a couple of pretty good things I'm quite pleased I own. Like, I have a copy of Suikoden 1 and 2, the PAL versions on PS1, which are obviously great games. I bought them much later. I originally played them via emulation. But to own 2 copies of that is really nice, especially because I bought them like when they were probably like £40 each. And I thought that was an astronomical amount of money to spend on 2 PS1 games, but now they're worth a lot more than that, and I'm glad I managed to pick them up when I did. I think the big one that always eats at me is Panzer Dragoon Saga. I wish I owned a copy of that, because it's one of the favorite games that I've covered on the channel. I wish I did, but it costs so much now. It's like £1,000 to £1,500 for a copy that sometimes aren't even in great condition. And I almost bought a copy a couple of years ago that was like £300, and I chickened out at the last moment. I was like, do I really want to spend £300 on a game that I probably won't even ever play? and I didn't. But I kind of wish I had done it now.
We're talking about obviously mostly about older games, but I know you play a lot of modern games as well. I know you cover those sometimes in live streams as well. So the big thing nowadays is mods and games, isn't it? Do you play much in terms of like modding? Any games really? Is that something that you do a lot of?
I used to, yeah. I used to be a pretty big PC gamer, and it's pretty impossible to separate PC gaming from the modding scene. I played through a super heavily modded version of Skyrim once. That was quite fun.
Yes.
To be honest, not massively. Like I kind of gravitate more towards like console games these days. I'm not sure why. I think I'm not sure why. I'll tell you what though, on the subject of mods, one of the best modern games I played recently was the Forgotten City. And that started life as a Skyrim mod. Which I found amazing because I have a friend who makes who designs mods for Skyrim, and I know how much work it is, and the fact that they made this whole spin-off crazy time looping game in Skyrim, and it was so popular that they were able to make it into an actual game. I thought that was pretty impressive. So yeah, if you want a modern game recommendation from me, check out the Forgotten City. That's a really awesome game.
Yeah, I've not heard of it. Wow, yeah. So we talked about your favourite games, obviously, in the last episode that we did. We talked about. So. I mean, and again, I know we've had a lot of chats about Chrono Trigger, but yeah, can you? It's. I know it's one of your all-time favourites, isn't it? So just talk through that. Talk through why Chrono Trigger means so much to you.
Do you know, really? To be honest, I would say, maybe a weird answer, I wouldn't say it means like a huge amount to me on like an emotional level. I just think it's really, really, really fucking fun.
Yeah.
Like,
really good game.
I just think as far as like 2D RPGs go, like it's basically none better than Chrono Trigger. And the reason why is it's just super fun. Like the storyline is just like kind of this mixture of like Dragon Quest and like almost like a kind of early Dragon Ball kind of simplicity, but then it also has like a really interesting way of bringing depth in the timelines you visit later on, the stuff that happens with like Lavos and Magnus and stuff. It's just super engaging. The characters are all like really memorable and really fleshed out, but not so fleshed out that it's like obsessed with like character development. There's just enough there to kind of hook you, and the combat system's super fun. I just think it doesn't really get any better than that in terms of 2D games. And it's a late Super Nintendo release before we passed over to the world of the PS1 and the Saturn and the N64. So yeah, I think it just represents the pinnacle of 2D design. There's so much creativity in it. There's so much clever writing and clever design, and yeah, it's just a supremely charming, supremely fun game. And I think you struggle to find anything out there that's better than it in the space it's in. I think that's why I like it so much. I think it's genuinely not driven by nostalgia or anything, because whenever I play it now, I still really enjoy playing it, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't played it. It's the perfect 2D RPG.
Yeah, no, it's so good. What did you think of Chrono Cross? And do you think
I like Chrono Cross? Yeah, I like Chrono Cross. I think it's a cool game. Like, it's definitely weird. Like, it's a weird sequel. I think people were expecting there to be a more expecting it to be more of a traditional follow-up to Chrono Trigger. But the thing is with Chrono Trigger, right, like that was almost certainly meant to be a standalone game, and it was seen internally at Square Enix as more of a kind of Final Fantasy like 6.5, like it was there's ideas in there that certain people wanted to be Final Fantasy 7, and the team that worked on it essentially is the core team from Square Enix, from Square, sorry, and then the core team from Enix as well. And so yeah, I think if you think of Chrono Cross as just like not necessarily a sequel, but then it's weird because then elements of it also are a sequel to Chrono Trigger. That's the weird thing about it. Like it comes across a lot better if you don't think of it as a follow-up, but then it is also completely tied to Chrono Trigger in a way that you can't escape from. But I like it. I like strange sequels that like break the mold and try different things. Like at the end of the day, I think the only complaint you can have with that is if you never replay games ever. And if you're happy to replay a game that's good, you know, there's no loss if a sequel tries something different. I'm glad that Chrono Cross exists, to be honest. I think it tells a pretty interesting story, and it does so with a pretty weird and wonderful cast of characters and a strange battle system that's unlike anything else on the market. It's cool. I like it. Yeah. It gets too much flack. I think people have softened on it, to be honest. When I was younger, people hated Chrono Cross. Like it was considered a bad game. I think people have softened on it a little bit, but I think they should soften even more. It's a good game.
It's funny you say that because I remember Chrono Cross coming out and getting like 10 out of 10 scores, and maybe it reviewed well, yeah. But people didn't enjoy playing it. I don't remember anyone. You could only play it on import in the UK anyway. Yeah. But I remember online people were like pretty negative about it, especially like the stuff that happens that's related to Chrono Trigger. People didn't really vibe with that stuff in the 90s. But I think people have like chilled out a bit. I find that maybe that happens as you get older. Like stuff that you really passionately hated when you were younger, you kind of just relax and you just think, it doesn't actually matter that much. Especially when you look at the state of like the video game industry now, like games that were like bad in the 90s and like the early 2000s, you just think, it's charming, really. Like it's not that bad. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned. It's kind of a segue question, really. But I mean, what are your thoughts on Final Fantasy VIII? And have they changed from when it came out?
8. Yeah, I like 8. I think 8's cool. Because I think it's a underrated game in the franchise. I really like how like it's very like open-ended in its design. Like you can do a lot of weird stuff like from very early on in it. And you know, the story is like kind of goofy and weird, and it has some like plot holes almost in it, like some pretty major plot holes in it.
It does,
but like it's still kind of cool. It's inventive and it's creative, and like the idea of the gardens and the witches and the Laguna stuff is great. Like I think Laguna is one of the greatest characters in Square's history. Like I have, in fact, down here, I have a little Laguna guy.
God damn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I think he's a great character.
Fantastic character.
It's full of some great stuff. And the combat system, like everyone's like, you just got to stand there like drawing over and over again. I'm like, you're not meant to play it that way. Like it's meant to be like, you know, creative, and you can do what you want, and you do a bit of drawing and you junction some stuff in a certain way, and it's cool. I like it. I think Final Fantasy VIII's a neat game.
No, I agree. The reason why I bring it up is because
Triple Triad's great.
Oh my god,
Triple Triad's awesome. Who doesn't like Triple Triad?
Completely
what a mini game! That's like the best mini game in any game ever.
Yeah,
like they added that into Final Fantasy 14 as an actual game.
Yeah.
Why is that not like a mobile game? Like, why have they not released that as just a regular mobile game? Surely that would be super popular.
It was included as like an addition into a mobile game at one point. I think it was like.
Oh, was it?
I don't know if it was not Record Keeper. It was one of the other ones, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can play it that way. But again, it's probably
they could surely go toe to toe with Hearthstone and stuff with Triple Triad. Surely,
card games are so popular now.
That game was great.
So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
But the reason why I asked the question in general is because I think time has been unkind to Final Fantasy VIII, and I think like today's society.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot because again, when the Final Fantasy VIII remaster came out and stuff like that, so some of the younger fans playing it for the first time, the first thing they do, those nowadays compared to I think what we did back maybe 15, 20 years ago, is they go straight to the internet to find the answers for things, and they find out obviously, you can draw things,
and then true.
Get OP and all that stuff. Whereas we found out, I think back in 15, 20 years ago that. You know, that's not how you do things, or we figured that out longer term. And it's just an interesting game to talk about.
Oh no, for sure, that's definitely a phenomena. Like, you know, I've spoke about it I'm speaking about it in a video that I've got coming up. In that there's an NES game I cover in it, and the reality is that there's just no way to engage with this NES game in the manner with which it was designed. because the reality is that when this game came out in 1986, people probably owned, a handful of games, if that. Like, I don't know about you, but I didn't own like a lot of games. So the games you had to play over and over again. Even if you finished it, you would play it again, And so games were designed with that in mind. They weren't designed as like these one and done experiences where you get everything out of the game in a single playthrough and you move on to something else. That just simply wasn't the case. There was no pre-owned games, really. Like there was no old generation with cheaper games that you could go back to. There was no emulation or anything like that. You just play the games that you had, and it's impossible basically to replicate that. And so when you go into these experiences now, even if you go in like, oh, I'm gonna really just like, I'm not gonna look at the internet, I'm not gonna use save states, I'm not gonna look at a walkthrough. It's hard to get away from the conditioning that we've gone through over the last like 3 decades. You can't get away from that. You can't just sit and play, I don't know, what's a good example? Like Ghosts and Goblins. You just can't like sit and play that non-stop for 6 months and play nothing else. Like no one's gonna do that. So it's very hard to engage with it as it was actually designed. So everyone looks at it and goes, oh, this game's like insanely fucking hard. It like, why does it repeat itself at the end? Why is like you die so easily? How's anyone supposed to finish this? Like, and the reality is that you were supposed to become a master of that game. You were supposed to play nothing else for like 4 or 5 months, become an absolute god at it, and that's how it was designed. So yeah, I think you're right in that the way that we interact with games changes, and whether we want it to or not. And so sometimes for older games, yeah, the intention gets lost, and there's nothing that can be done about it. It's frustrating because it feels like those experiences get lost and they get changed. It's like you see it a lot with like mechanics get that a lot. So like random battles and like fixed cameras and checkpoints and things like that, and save points and stuff like that. People really struggle to get their head into a mindset where these things were normal. You see it a lot, like games not having checkpoints and stuff. I'm like, you didn't, that wasn't a problem. Nobody thought that Tomb Raider 2 was a bad game because you had to like choose where you used the save points. Like that didn't make it a bad game. You just had to change to adapt to what they were doing. But game design nowadays is a lot more homogenous. So if a game does something in a weird way, like if it doesn't have quick saves and checkpoints and manual saving, like that's bad. Like if it doesn't have like the camera on the right thumbstick, movement on the left thumbstick, shoot on R1, jump on like select on X, jump on A, select on whatever, like back on B, like all of the buttons are set now for every genre. So stuff that steps outside of that mold, people don't like it. And they can be quite rough for people returning to old games to kind of get their minds into the state you need to be in to enjoy them.
True. I
mean, I struggle with it, and I do that for a living.
yeah. But then I completely agree with what you said, and that is an interesting take. But on top of that, though, there is what I've noticed recently with some more recent stuff. But I think Sony are leading the charge on this. It's like accessibility control options and stuff like that. I think The Last of Us is classed as the most accessible game of all time with the settings.
Yeah,
and
it
stuff
is.
Like that. So I do feel like we are starting to, have a more a broad approach to certain things as well. So I think it's a bit of both, isn't it?
Accessibility is a strange one. I don't know where I stand with it sometimes, because certain ideas of accessibility are like a no-brainer, like colorblind mode, like stuff like that, like being able to resize font and stuff like that. Yeah, I that's a no-brainer. That should be in every game. There's no real reason to include it. But I think I struggle more with accessibility when it comes to like story modes and stuff like that, like allowing players this idea that you're somehow experiencing a game if you're not experiencing it the way the designer intended it to be, and that's somehow a fault on the part of the designer. Like I find that to be quite strange, like, and that's an accusation which is only really levied at video games. You don't really see that in any other medium. You don't see complaints that like that that Dune is like too long, and well, I suppose that's a poor example because you do see that you do see those complaints about Dune, but you rarely see those style complaints towards movies and stuff. There's more of an understanding there that like, let's say The Lighthouse, that movie with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson in it. Like, I think there's pretty much an understanding that movie is not for everyone. So some people are just not gonna enjoy that movie. There's no accusation that movie should be different in order to appeal to more people. I find that to be an odd phenomenon that happens with video games. Like, you saw it a lot with when Elden Ring came out, this discussion about like easy modes, like, oh, what people are missing out on Elden Ring because there's not an easy mode and they don't like the mechanics. But that just means you don't like Elden Ring, and that's fine. You don't have to like and experience everything. It's okay to not participate in some things. I find that odd, and I kind of draw the line with accessibility when it comes to things like this idea that people are being like locked out from experiences because of things that are fundamental to a game's design. I find that to be an odd discussion. Stuff like colorblind modes, stuff like that, like, definitely that should be in it. But it gets a bit funny when it becomes about not accessibility in terms of like allowing people to tailor the game to their own wants, but up against the limits of what the designer actually intended the game to be. It becomes a bit of an odd one. I don't know where I stand on it, because at the end of the day, like, people should just be able to play whatever they want. Like, who fucking cares? Like, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, I don't just come across like a gatekeeper.
I thought that was a very good. I thought you gave a very good explanation to that. Yeah. I think your line's been drawn perfectly as well in terms of accessibility versus game design. I thought that was. I draw my line in a similar place for sure.
I think it makes sense. Like, especially if you approach. Maybe it's easier for me to get my head around because I approach games from what is the designer trying to like achieve here, rather than what am I looking to get out of this game
as a consumer.
Exactly. You're kind of loath to use that term, but because it's a bit of a nasty meme. But like there is a bit of that in it where like it's just like people just looking to consume like more media, like, and it's just like it's cool to not like stuff. It's cool for some stuff to not be for you. Like me personally, I'm not mad into like racing games and like racing sim games. Like Gran Turismo and stuff. Like, I like Gran Turismo enough, but I'm not like crazy on it. But that's like on me. Like, I don't think that like racing games should be tailored to my tastes. I don't think there's anything wrong with there being things out there that I just don't I don't like. That's fine.
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, this would be an interesting question for you. I asked this question to a lot, but I didn't ask you on episode 1, which is. It'd be interesting asking you this because of how many games you've not consumed. But what's the hardest game? Is there a hardest game you've ever played? I mean, again, that's a broad
probably. I was
going
to think. Yeah, I mean, oh god, maybe like probably like one of the early Castlevanias, like Castlevania 3. Like, that game is ridiculously difficult, especially the US version. The Japanese version is not too hard, but the US version is brutally difficult. They like increased the difficulty between its Japanese and American release because the rental market was really big in America, and they didn't want people to just rent the game, beat it, and never rent it again. So yeah, they cranked up the challenge, and that game is super hard. Like, if you're not practiced in Castlevania when you go into it, there's no chance. You're not going to get to like the third level. And if you play as like Alucard in that game as well, it's just so like some bits of it's super easy because you can like turn into a bat and skip sections, but other than that, he's just rubbish. And if you play as him, that game is like virtually impossible. Beyond that, I'm not sure really. I'm trying to think. I have beaten, obviously. I think my thing is that I'm not particularly skilled at games, but I'm like pretty good at just throwing myself at them over and over again until I can eventually come out on top. So I can usually beat most games if I just have enough time. But yeah, if you put me on the spot and ask me to beat Castlevania 3 right now, I probably couldn't. Well, no, what am I saying? I probably couldn't. I definitely couldn't. But if you gave me like a week and said finish this game, I could probably do it then. Yeah, I'd probably say it's got to be some older games like that. I find modern games are like not really that hard.
No.
Like especially like a lot of people talk about like FromSoft games. Like I've finished all the FromSoft games. I wouldn't say any of them are. Like Sekiro's pretty challenging, but even then, like I beat that fairly comfortably. I think I probably I don't know what comfortable is. I probably died like 100 times, but like that's probably normal, you know. I don't know really. I'm trying to think. To be honest, the hardest game I've probably played in my entire life, and this is a genuine answer, is probably Dota. That's probably the hardest game I've ever played. Like multiplayer games are probably harder than single player games. In all honesty, playing like Halo and like Counter-Strike and like Dota and stuff, like Age of Empires, StarCraft. Oh my god, playing StarCraft 2 online when that first came out was so hard. Some people are so good at that game. Like, and if you think the pros are up here and we're just in the bottom with all the plebs, some of them are amazing at StarCraft, and you just get absolutely demolished, and you would hardly even know like what happened. I would say probably multiplayer games are the hardest games I've ever played.
And that's that thing about multiplayer games, isn't there, as well, where they do like matchmaking with it, isn't it? With people with similar skill levels play against each other and stuff. But that's a contesting hot take, isn't it, for some people? Like, oh no, we shouldn't have that. And then there's a lot of
it's funny with matchmaking. I don't know where I stand with that, because obviously like growing up in the like the 90s and 2000s playing games, like you didn't really have like skill-based matchmaking. It was all done by like servers and stuff, and that was in a way like quite cool. Like you would like get to know people who were like really good, and you would like copy strategies, and certain servers would have like certain strategies would be like popular on certain strategies, and then you might like play in a different server and people do things like a completely different way. Like that was quite cool. Did obviously lead to you usually getting absolutely like wrecked by people who just spent all day and all night playing like Quake or something. But like it was quite cool. There was benefits to it. Sometimes skill-based matchmaking can be a bit like boring, especially if it's like perfect skill-based matchmaking, which presumably gives you like a 50-50 win and loss. Yeah, like that can be quite boring sometimes. You just go on like a run of wins, then you go on a run of losses, or you just win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Like that's quite like that can be quite dull. I don't know really. I mean, who am I kidding? It's skill-based matchmaking. It's here to stay. But like old server style matchmaking was quite fun.
Yeah. Sorry, it just reminded me of certain things that happened in the past. What do you do to unwind when you're not playing video games? What do you do in your spare time, if you have any?
Well, I don't have that much spare time, to be honest. The videos are quite all consuming. Luckily they're pretty fun to work on, and this is like my hobby, so it's not really too. My distinction between having fun and working has become quite that separation has become quite thin. But yeah, I would say probably I read a lot. I would say that's probably my second biggest passion, other than video games, is reading. I'm a really passionate reader, and so Steph. We do a lot of sitting together reading. Very sound like old pensioners.
That sounds lovely.
It's kind of nice. And and to be honest, I think I'm not like, again, I'm going to come across like a super boomer, but like I don't super vibe with like modern TV and like modern movies so much. And I think there's something quite comforting about reading. It's kind of like, you know, it's not changing with streaming services, or it's not changing because of a writer's strike or something. So, you know, it's you just pick up a book and it's just you and the author's vision for the story, and I feel like it's good for your like soul and mind to read. So yeah, that's probably my second great love. I'd really like to start like a channel about like a book channel at one point. Like with no like expectations of it being anything, but just to talk about different books I love, try and like inspire other people to like read, try and inspire people to like pick up, you know, interesting novels and challenge themselves to read stuff. It's something I'm really passionate about, and maybe one day I'll get around to doing that. But I also don't want to turn everything I love into work as well, you know.
Yes.
It make me suddenly hate books.
Yeah, for sure. So you still do some streaming, but because we've had a lot of chats about streaming on this podcast, obviously, and offline. I know we have.
Yeah, it's probably quite weird talking to me about streaming versus everybody else on the podcast, because I'm pretty negative about it.
I love the fact that the first episode of this podcast, the first person I asked went, "Don't stream."
First one is...
What advice would you give? Don't stream. Don't do it. I still love that. Yeah. It's brilliant.
When I was rewatching that episode in preparation for this one, and I was like, "Oh my god, yeah!" I'm going pretty hard on it as well. Like I don't pull any punches.
It was great. I loved it. It was great. But you again since then, you did come back to Twitch initially, and then you went off. Then obviously YouTube, and then you came back to Twitch early this year, didn't you? And now you've kind of
for a little bit, yeah.
And now it's YouTube streaming, isn't it?
Yeah. To be honest, I'm wondering if I even continue streaming on YouTube. To be honest, I just think I'm not really built for it. I don't think I'm an interesting enough person to garner large attention in a live environment. I'm very good when I have time to think, and I have time to think about what I'm going to do and what I'm going to say, and to compose my words in an interesting fashion. But on the spot, I'm just like, what should I talk about? What do I do? So yeah, I think probably my opinion probably hasn't changed all that much since that first podcast.
I love that. I did love it. So, it's interesting just as a topic, in general, though, because again, like a lot of streamers, it's nothing new really. You do a lot of just chatting, should we say, don't you? And then the game comes in. Like I've noticed as well. There's a lot of conversations going around with streamers at the moment where the viewership dips. One that wants to just chatting finishes, and then the games keep being played. And that puts a lot of people off. They're like, "Oh, have I done something?" And it's like, well, no.
Sure. No, I mean, I have that on the streams I do on the YouTube channel now. It's definitely a thing. Yeah. When you're just talking at the start, you're interacting with people. Like it's engaging. Like you're answering people's questions. People are there to ask you a question, and they wait to have their question read, and they do that. Whereas when you're just playing a game, you're looking at the game, someone might click on. There's no reason to interact with you really. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Unless your stream is completely geared around you playing games and stuff. I think it's kind of unavoidable. And that's I'm thinking of changing the stream on the YouTube to be more of a irregular thing. Like maybe do streams after I release a video, or to announce a new video, or for a special event or something like that. I think doing a regimented weekly one doesn't really. I'm not sure it really suits me, to be honest. I struggle to find a way to justify it. I just always think it's just not interesting enough. Like, who wants to watch that? Who wants to spend the night watching that? A kind of golden rule I kind of operate by is would I be interested in this? Would I watch this video? And if the answer is yes, then I should go ahead with it. But if the answer is no, I shouldn't make it. And I sometimes think with my own stream, I'm like, I wouldn't watch my own stream.
No, I completely disagree as a viewer for your live streams, and obviously for your content on YouTube. I think you're fantastic. Obviously
they're very different. They're very different things, though. The live streams and the videos are a completely different beast. Mm-hmm. I just think the reality is that the kind of people who want to watch my videos aren't necessarily the kind of people who want to watch a stream. They appeal to very different things. So I think mine might become more of a kind of irregular thing, and that might make it more exciting. When I do a live stream, it might make people more interested. If there's one a month as opposed to one every week, it's more of a, oh look, there's that stream. I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna see what it's about. I'm gonna hang around for a bit. Rather than it being. I'm a big believer in scarcity on the internet. I think is a good thing. I think people are terrified of scarcity. I think people think that you just stream all the time, publish videos all the time, tweet all the time, and it'll up your engagement. And yeah, it will, but it's like crap engagement. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you just focus on making stuff that's good, you don't have to make stuff all the time. Like, you can have days off, you can relax, you can have time off. You know, so I'm a big believer in that. I think maybe I need to replicate that in the stream as well.
Yeah. So
yeah, there's a Streamer Stories exclusive for you.
There we go. So do you watch YouTube? I think I know the answer, but do you watch YouTube content creators then as inspiration? And who are some of your favorites?
Oh, as inspiration, probably not. Like, I don't not to like gain ideas or anything like that. That's something that happens, you know, just with me. But there's a lot of people who make videos and whatnot out there that I love a lot. I'd say probably the biggest inspiration for me, and this is going to seem weird because his stuff is absolutely nothing like mine, but Tim Rogers, who does Action Button reviews and who, you know, previously worked for Kotaku and, you know, has done game development and in the past. He was a huge inspiration for me to get started because his videos are so strange and so long and so sprawling and detailed and rambling and kind of weirdly autobiographical at the same time. And he talks about just the oddest games. And I watched a video of his about a Japanese dating sim called Tokimeki Memorial, and I think it was probably like a life-changing experience, just because I thought that on YouTube you just made like reviews and stuff, like, and you know, I grew up like watching, you know, I'd say grew up, that's probably the wrong term, but like, you know, in the early days of the internet, like, you know, you'd watch like Angry Video Game Nerd or like Spoonie, you know, people like this, really early dudes who were doing reviews, but they were like 5-minute episodes. It was like zany characters in them. They had like plot lines that ran across the reviews and stuff. Like, and then over time, you know, YouTube channels grew into like, you know, what they are kind of now, which is more professional, more kind of high effort. Not that those old ones weren't high effort, but it's in like a different way, more kind of polished, I'd say. And I think I had always thought they were just, you know, it was just like IGN but run by on a YouTube channel. And seeing that video really kind of was like a light bulb moment for me to think like, oh no, like you can make like weird out of the box stuff on YouTube, and it can work. People will watch it. And similarly, there's the Patrician TV video, his like 7-hour long Morrowind video, and that was appearing in my feed for months, and I just thought, what the fuck is this? Like, who the fuck has made a 7-hour video about Morrowind? And I just thought it was like a joke. And then when I watched it, I was like, holy shit, this is actually like super. This is really, really high effort. This is really like well researched and well put together. It's a really interesting video. Like, how the hell have I been watching this for 7 hours? Like, how have I watched this like every night for an entire week? And that kind of made me realize those two things kind of together made me realize that, like, really long videos on YouTube are super enjoyable. It's really like nice and comforting to come back every night to the same video and continue going through it. Yeah. And then the Tim Rogers video made me realize that you don't just have to cover like the latest games or well-known games or review classic video games or whatever. Like, you can just talk about weird stuff, and that's what inspired me to do the Jade Empire video, because I was like, here's a game that I feel like I know a lot about, is really interesting, is really weird, and I don't think anyone's talking about it. And you know, I'm not just going to do like a 10-minute 15-minute video where I say, oh, Jade Empire, yeah, check it out. I'm going to really like unpick everything about this game, like why it was made, where it went, is it good, if it's not good, why isn't it good, why are the bits that are good, you know, like really deconstruct it. And yeah, it was from there.
Yeah, and again, I love the fact that again you do that. You have a very balanced view on the video games that you cover as well. You don't just I always try and be quite positive in them, in that I don't really honestly believe, although that being said, I think this has changed now, but when you're talking about games from the 90s, the 80s,
the 2000s to a degree, people rarely went into game development looking to make bad games or looking to make cash in games. Like even like licensed games now, you think of them as like from the Wii era and like the PS2 era, you think of licensed games as like cheap cash ins.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case in the 80s. Like licensed games had huge amounts of effort poured into it, like Aladdin and the Lion King, these like 2D games that were made by extremely talented designers, and they were really trying to like push the boundaries of video game design. It just happened to be using a license. And the reality is that people back then, at least, they weren't trying to make bad games, and bad games happened because of, you know, budgets and deadlines and executive interference and honest mistakes. And you've got to try and view these games through that lens. You know, people weren't thinking, oh yeah, fuck it, you know, this kid who's just you know, come from the University of Tokyo, who has done computer programming, let's just stick him on this crap game, put it out in 2 weeks, we don't care what it's like, and the kids on it just like, oh, I don't care either. Like, that just isn't how development worked. Everyone was trying to make stuff that was good, but you have to kind of understand why something that isn't good emerged out of intentions to make something good. You know, so it's not necessarily that I'm trying to be balanced, but I think that if you approach reviewing stuff with that mindset and that in mind, I think you inevitably come out of not really that negative about all that much stuff, because, you know, you're trying to see the good in stuff, which is what people were trying to do. I mean, there's obviously a line, like, you know, like when you talk about like Shadow of Mordor's monetization and stuff like that, like, that's just cynical. There's no reason for that to be in the game, so you can be pretty negative about that. But yeah, broadly speaking, I try and be quite positive. I think people like that too. Like, life is fucking miserable. Like, people don't want to be like the internet in like 2008 2009 is just like raw negativity. Like, you know, the most famous person is the angry video game nerd. You know, literally his name is that he's angry, and he spends the whole time shouting about it. And I know it's really funny and stuff, like, and I know it's a joke, like, so it's not that big of a deal, but like, it's kind of like emblematic of like rant culture that was really how like YouTube kind of like worked back then. Like, it was all about like getting angry and like swearing about how shit a game is. But like, I think people don't really want that these days. People's lives suck now, so like, people want comfort and they want something pleasant. They don't want to just have someone screaming about how terrible stuff is.
That's true.
Although I have thought about doing that. I have thought about doing like the inverse of it. Do like a really negative video to kind of juxtapose it. I'll call it like do like a hit. I'll do like a hit piece on like a game I really hate. Yeah. Where I just go like completely negative the whole time.
I think like maybe a fool's joke. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, maybe. I've thought about doing it maybe on like Final Fantasy 15. Oh, I detest that game, and so I could do like a hit piece on everything wrong with it and just non-stop ranting for 3 hours.
Oh, it's a streamer story. I'm not going
to do that. That'd be awful. I think I'd have a heart attack if I did that.
Oh, that'd be funny. That would be good. Well, I've got one more question to ask, really, which is simply, you know, just talk us through obviously what you're willing to talk about in terms of what are the plans for the future of the channel then. So this is probably coming out in trying to think, because obviously I need to give you that heads up. So probably going to be June, July time, late June, early July maybe, hopefully.
All right. Well, the next video I'm working on is retrospective about the Indiana Jones video games. So yeah, the history of that franchise and the history of kind of the licensing of that franchise, which sounds boring, but it's a lot more interesting than it sounds. That's due to come out the 25th of June, just before the 5th movie, which I'm working on that at the moment. Should be pretty good. I'm really enjoying working on it. I think there's a lot more. It's one of those series that's like massive and everybody knows, but like, I think people don't really realize how much of an important video game franchise it was. Like, it's really tied into like LucasArts, the studio, like their history and the kind of rise of it kind of intersects with the kind of golden age in video game development, and its fall kind of lines up quite nicely with the kind of fall away from that golden age. And yeah, there's lots of interesting stuff in there. And then the month after that, well, hopefully the month after that, I should have pretty big video coming out about the Metroid franchise, So yeah, similar to the Castlevania video, like a pretty hefty piece about the entire history of the Metroid franchise.
Yeah.
And then after that, I don't really have anything planned. Really, I kind of just make it up as I go along. Kind of see what I fancy doing. I maybe plan like 1 or 2 videos in advance, but outside of that, I just kind of have lots of videos in my mind that I want to make, but kind of just see which one feels right in the moment, and that I want to work on as well, because that's the big thing. If you're working on a video for like 2 months, like you gotta really be passionate about it to make it work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's coming up in the next few months. Hopefully people like them. I kind of think it should be pretty good. Really the kind of aim, as it were, is to try and get to like 100,000 subscribers, so I can get that plaque up on my wall that says I'm legitimate, that gives me the validation that I'm so desperately seeking. But yeah, that's the main aim. But yeah, hopefully these 2 videos can get me there. After that, who knows? I've got lots of different weird little ideas for little side things and stuff coming up. Yeah, we'll see where it ends up.
No, it's exciting.
I'd really like to. I think the main thing that is like the medium term. I'd really like to try my hand at writing a novel. I'd really like to do that. So maybe if the channel gets to a place where it's like in a nice place where I can leave it for like a month or 2, I think it would be fun to try my hand at some writing.
Yeah.
Because I've always been, like, obviously as the channel shows, like I've always been really into writing, and I've got tons of little ideas that I'd like to see fleshed out. That may be a fun little project to do in the near future at some point.
Oh wow, that'd be awesome. That would be really cool. Wow. Yeah,
hopefully. Yeah. Who knows? I might sit down and start writing, and a week later I realise I have absolutely no talent whatsoever. So.
No.
Maybe that will come to nothing.
Oh, Matt, that was a really fun chat, mate. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad. Really good. I had fun too.
Yeah. So one more time, we can find you on YouTube, obviously. Anywhere else can we find you? You have a Patreon if people want to. Want to contribute.
I have a Patreon. I mean, I would highly, if you're only finding out about me from the podcast, I would highly advise you go and watch some videos first before you ever consider pledging on my Patreon. There's nothing interesting on there. Don't worry. Just previews of videos, me moaning. So there's a YouTube channel. I'm on Twitter as well, but like even on there, I tweet so infrequently. Sometimes I feel like I tweet something and I get like hundreds of people interact with it. Sometimes I tweet something and nobody gives a shit. I have no idea what I'm doing on social media, so it's probably not even worth following me on there. Just YouTube is the one thing that I do well. Follow me on there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and there's actual quality content there. None of my other endeavors are worth engaging with.
Oh no, I think you're great. Thanks so much again, mate. That was brilliant. And
no worries, man.
That was great.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun having me on. Yeah, thanks very much. And here's to another 50 episodes.
Thanks so much. Oh yeah, hopefully we'll see. All right, everyone, take care. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.